Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for joining us today. So Hong Kong is actually one of the largest biotech fundraising centers in Asia. The city boasts a thriving healthcare infrastructure, and we can really put up a tough fight against global giants. So this is an exciting opportunity, not just for entrepreneurs, but also for investors. Hong Kong has really spent the last few years transforming its tech capabilities and has invested heavily in research and development. And this has really been brought to the forefront, especially during the whole COVID-19 period. So this brings up a few very exciting and interesting questions, like what are the opportunities ahead for Hong Kong? What are the challenges? And how do we, as a community of startups and with the government, take advantage and make the best out of this thriving fast lane? So for those of you who don't know me, I am Relena Sei. I'm the CEO and editorial director at Jumpstart Media. We are an innovation as a service provider, so we do anything related to innovation. We have media, we do a lot of education, which my partner is very proud of, and accelerator programs, and we're now going into the Web3 space. So with us today, the MC earlier was very kind enough to make an introduction to all three of our speakers. I think we've got a wonderful panel that will have a lot of great information to share with the whole audience. So it's great for all of you to join us, and a shout out to everyone that's joining us online as well. Jumpstart team, hi. Okay, great. I just want to give everyone a heads up that at the end of the panel, the last 5 minutes, you'll have an opportunity for Q&A. Please make sure to scan the QR code, type in your questions, or let me know your questions as well, and we'd be happy to share those with our speakers. So I'd like to start the panel today with asking everyone a general question to get our feet wet. So how do you guys think Hong Kong's healthcare industry has changed over the last 2 years, especially with all the COVID developments and kind of the focus on health tech recently? So William, why don't we start with you?
I think Hong Kong is progressing very rapidly in terms of healthcare. You know, Hong Kong got the best healthcare in the world with a lot of resources invested. And but I think one major barrier for the medical industry is really on the embracement of technology. You know, Hong Kong government has been pushing the e-health to basically have a pace where you can centralize your health data and then make it accessible to everyone. But then that data is often only working in silo. The government got that kind of infrastructure, but then the private sector are not participating. So I think our job is actually how to introduce technology to the health ecosystem so that all the data can be interlinked and then it can be made into good use for the better healthcare. And for MediConCen, our company is targeting to automate the insurance claim using the data. We think actually you have a lot of data available in the medical provider. You have a lot of data in the insurance company. Actually, a lot of things doesn't need the patient to be done. You don't need to do anything to complete your insurance claim, in fact, because your medical provider got all the data and your insurer got all your data. Why not they talk to each other and then your trouble are solved? So I think that's the part moving forward. And I like the idea of the data economy. So how to foster a data economy that allow even the private sector to participate in sharing data for the better treatment of the patient and for the joint interest of every petitioner.
Thank you. Justin, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Sure, thank you very much. So when we talk about changes that we see in the past few years, I think one thing that's very obvious to us is the openness to entertaining new technologies, new ideas. And inherently, I think there was always a big pushback from the healthcare for very good reasons. It has to be a conservative industry. You're talking about lives. You can't really make a lot of mistakes. But right now, I think when people are seeing potential ways to make mistakes, they're slowly changing into inevitability where you have to do digitalization. You have to think about when people has more reluctance to go to clinics, hospitals, when they don't really have to. So when we first got started, when we started doing medical imaging that's portable, that's new, that can be delivered to people's home, to offices, there was a natural sort of a hesitation about how do we adopt these technologies. But right now we're getting a lot of inbound about how we can enable this to better engage customers, how to improve doctor relationship, how can we do digitalization a lot better, getting more data points that we can monitor patients a lot better, and then with all the follow-ups from it. I think in that general sense, that general educational concept about how we can provide better care with new technologies, in a sense that let's try something new out. It's certainly a big change that we've seen there, and it's obviously very welcoming for us to know.
Okay, and adoption of technology. Ronald, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Well, I will speak in Greater Bay Area perspective about this 2 years. So Hong Kong and Mainland are separated by COVID. Actually, we are witnessing a closer collaboration of the medical device development between these two places. You see, there are more and more cross-border startups working on the medical device together. And also there are policy shifts. And with new policy, actually Hong Kong company now can work directly with the mainland hospital to start their clinical trials or apply for mainland medical device accreditation directly. So I would say this creates a very excellent opportunity for the MedTech to explore the, I think is very huge, the China market area.
Great. Thank you, Ronald, for giving us a kind of a general overview with not just Hong Kong, but the general larger ecosystem. So there are three major themes that I'm very interested in the health tech space. The first I want to talk about is just the infrastructure of health tech. The second is, of course, what Justin talked about, the technology. And third is the support system. Because healthcare, unlike a lot of different areas, is one that's heavily regulated, right? So the government, the support system, those are actually very important players in the health tech space. So those are three themes we'd love to be able to talk about today. So let's go a little bit further into the first theme, which is the infrastructure and how your startups and your companies fit into the larger picture. So in the last few years, we do see a lot of capabilities in Hong Kong's health tech space, but we see a lot of cracks as well. So let's understand a little bit more about MediConCen. So earlier, William, you talked about how the data is one of the important things that MediConCen focuses on, right? And that's actually very important, especially in a whole industry that needs to know a lot of knowledge before they're able to make decisions, before we can move forward in this space. So can you tell us a little bit more about how MediConCen benefits Hong Kong's larger healthcare ecosystem, and what has been the response to your platform so far?
Actually, our core technology is based on the blockchain. So we aim to provide the connectivity such that every practitioner in the ecosystem can actually do transactions seamlessly and on a trusted basis. Let's take insurance as an example. A lot of medical operation or medical service is financed by insurance. Hong Kong is the major hub in the international insurance market. So, but if you look at the status quo, when you go to an inpatient do a surgery, you will often still be bordered with the TDS claim process. You still need to take the bill. You need to ask the doctor to fill in what we call a claim form. That is really hard to fill in. I am an actuary, but I cannot fill it in. Only the agent and the doctor got the knowledge to fill it in. So you need to seek for help from a lot of people in order to complete that kind of process. And and you need to remember the procedure yourself as an otherwise after you leave the hospital and you cannot ask the doctor to fill in the claim form for you. So it's really a pain in the ass while you are sick. So, but if you look at the nature of these kind of TDS process, it's often coming from the legacy where the system doesn't talk to each other. If imagine a world where the hospital, the clinic, the doctor, and the insurance system, if they are all interlinked, they can talk to each other, then they can agree on a procedure to settle your claim, you will not need to pay the doctor at all because the insurance is settled by itself. And you won't need to do anything simply to get your insurance claim done. So this kind of infrastructure would enable everyone to basically have a more efficient life. And it saves the time from the doctor to fill in this kind of a paper form, save the time of patient, and save the time from the insurance. Ultimately, get the cost down. So I think this is a very important infrastructure that Hong Kong should have in place. And we are working on it. We see the doctor are actually supportive of it. Of course, some nurses will still be a bit hesitant to do those digital things, but they're starting to change. And we are very optimistic on that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, William. Those are some exciting developments. Justin, my next question is for you. You're actually very impressive. You were on the list of Forbes 30 under 30, especially for your work in Myanmar, right? So I want to ask you a little bit more about inclusive development, especially given your background and the work that you did in Myanmar. What do you think that the idea of inclusive development can be brought, like how do you think that can be brought to Hong Kong's healthcare ecosystem?
Yeah, so Myanmar was one of my previous ventures where I'd helped to local communities to build a lot of infrastructures, small scale ones in a village and all of those. And I think to look at inclusiveness, there are two main things that we normally tackle in. The first one is understanding the problem in itself. Because people think about medical and healthcare generally in a very macro sense. You look at hospital being overburdened, all of it. And then it trickles down to a lot of different stakeholders, and that's one big part that we have to solve. We're solving as complex something as medical as well. So we go to elderly homes, we talk to operators, we talk to end users, families, all of it, to understand some of the problems that we can solve. Obviously, it goes into corporate service as well. How we can deliver services directly, medical scanning to people's places, whether it's at home or at offices, so that they can do it a lot easier. So all of those are something that we do need to actively ask and listen to. So that one big part of it, about how we can make it a bit more inclusive. The second part really is about accessibility. So even if you listen, you still need to implement something that's reachable to many people. And we look at accessibility into sort of three sort of layers. The first one is that affordability is always the main thing. And it's not just about whether you can afford it, but how often can you afford this. So a lot of people, when we're looking at, generally if you're more health conscious, you might do healthcare checking once a year or more, but then it's not every few months. So that's the first one. If you make it cheaper, you can do that. Second one is portability, so it's more decentralized. And the third one we look at is whether it can be administered by a lot more people. So that's how we look at inclusivity in general and how we can make it a lot more accessible to people in that sense.
Great, wow, thank you so much, Justin. Ronald, my next question is for you. So we talk about data, we talk about accessibility, inclusiveness, but one of the important pillars when it comes to health tech is education. For you, it's actually quite special because you are bringing in technology, VR, into the whole education space. Can you tell us a little bit more about your startup and how do you think students and practitioners can benefit from mVisioner?
Okay, so first question is I want to say medical learning is a career-long process. So usually a student needs to take 5 or 8 years in medical schools, and after become a resident, they need to take another 8 to 10 years to become a surgeon. So, and these studies are primary empirical and very not easy to assess. For example, you need to have a dissection in anatomy, or you need to observe a lot of surgery to gain the required experience to become a good surgeon. So here we come to two goals or objectives that our company would like to have. First is to make medical education or medical data more accessible to the training through VR or AI we have. And then the second one is to use robotics to help the surgeon in the surgery. So beginning in the Cyberport, we have built a VR-based medical engine. I think currently it's still one of the very few in mainland Hong Kong that can generate a 3D patient model using medical images in case-by-case basis, and also professionals can assess and simulate surgical procedures in a way much simpler or much easier to assess compared to what they did before. At least they don't need to dissect anybody. The other thing is that we explore, or actually we are now having surgical robots to assist surgeons accurately executing minimal invasive orthopedic surgery. So our system, this system can build with the precision of sub-millimeter, helping the surgeons to fix the spine with an incision less than 1 centimeter. And also because of all these devices, we put less requirement on surgeon experience because the AI, the localization, and other techniques help the surgeons to make some decision or locate the place in a precise point. So we have a CE accreditation on this so that we can sell in the Euro Southeast Asia area and currently running more clinical trials in China. So I think it's very exciting now to involve in education and surgical procedures that can help to standardize the surgery.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ronald. So talking about technology, that actually goes very smoothly into my next theme, is how technology in healthcare has been changing the scene, especially when it comes to digitization, Web3, and accessibility in general. So Justin, you talked a lot about inclusiveness and how that involves accessibility, affordability, etc. Can you tell us how you can create advanced tech while keeping it affordable? Those seem like two different concepts. So do you think that there's any compromises in these areas?
So it's not necessarily compromises, but identifying what you can provide the most value, what markets that you could attack into. So what we're looking at is not trying to compete with diagnostics. We're looking at a space that's before diagnosis, pre-hospital. How can we make early detection and monitoring a lot easier? And that enables us to look at the problem a lot differently. Because it's really just about accurately picking up potential diseases that you can work on a lot earlier. So you might not need something as accurate as MRI for those sort of diagnosis or screening for early signs. So that's one part that we know we can focus on and don't have to push always for the next limits for those sort of resolution. So that's one side. And the second part is that we look at cost right at the start, obviously for a lot of businesses. And we make it sure that it's something scalable, it's something that sole practitioner can use, and essentially, put something that we can put at home as well. So cost control is one other thing. And the third one is that we work on a B2B2C model, where the cost is not fully on the burden of consumers. It's more of a service tool, a revenue generating tool for businesses that we work with. So that instead of dozens of thousands for a single device, it can be broken down into single scan services that people can bring to people's home for a couple hundred Hong Kong. That makes it a lot more affordable and easy to penetrate the market in that sense.
Great, thank you, Justin. So affordability, when we talk about can we pay for the medical services that we need, one of the early things that everyone thinks about is insurance, right? Do I have insurance? Will my insurance cover this? And this actually goes a lot to William, what you were talking about earlier, especially when it comes to data and how that feeds into the whole insurance industry as well. So William, I know that with MediConCen, that does affect or improve the insurance industry in many ways in terms of speed. How you were talking about how to fill in the data, even you don't know how to fill it in, it has to be a specialist to fill it in, etc. So claiming insurance, all of that is quite a tedious process, but you're actually able to speed up the whole process. Could you tell us a little bit more about the whole process itself and how speed can be kind of balanced with accuracy and reliability?
Mm-hmm. I think this is a very good question. I think the data, the quality of the data actually depend on how you collect that data. For example, you see in the traditional way, you take an image of the receipt and then you upload it to the insurance portal. Then a lot of information is lost in the translation. For example, you can only capture a little bit of the information, and even with the most advanced OCR, the data is not 100% accurate. But then if you can directly connect to the system of the provider, say we have a strategic investor who basically run the clinic management system and the hospital management system. So if you retrieve the information directly from those systems, then the user doesn't need to input it twice. Then the accuracy is a lot more secure because by default you would have an accurate data in your own system. So we apply a layer of blockchain to ensure that no one can distort the data. So everyone can then rely on the data that is recorded on the common system to do all the things that they need to do. So I think that's the first way to ensure integrity of the data. And of course, the AI is playing a part. We spot the outlier using AI, and then standardization of the disease classification, ICD-10, things like that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So another important theme in general when it comes to tech, as I mentioned, is government and the support. And what is special about all of the speakers that have joined us today is they all run companies and startups that are part of the Cyberport ecosystem. And that really means that they've gotten support not just from those that are around them, but also from the larger Hong Kong ecosystem as well. So Ronald, I see your background and it looks very medical to me. But I know that you're also one of these companies in the Cyberport ecosystem. Could you tell us a little bit more about the support that you've received and what kind of support you wish you could continue to get?
Well, I think the support comes from both financially, which everyone are very focused on, and three parts: financially, community, and also emotionally. But I was first talking about emotion, because starting up a business was never my first idea. I was want to become an academia to do research. But then there is a Cyberport micro fund, I think is an advertisement in the MTR. And I look at it and I think about my background of having working these MRI machines. Then I think, why don't we try? So that's why I started this company. It's simply because of that advertisement. It's a very major kick to me. And then throughout, I was very new to starting a business. I don't know how. I do not need a prototype or business plan. And in this micro fund scheme, they actually guide you to do everything, starting from the business plan, how to modify it, starting from evaluating your prototype, evaluating the demos. So I think it's very important for everyone with an idea to connect to the business. So that is the emotional part, and the community part is like they have a lot of advice. And finally, it's the financial part. So for the from the micro fund and now the macro fund, they can do some co-investment. I think it's very important to start out with funds to develop their company. So overall, I would say I will be very thankful that by having this advertisement come to my mind, then I start a journey which is really worth taking.
Great. Thank you, Ronald. Justin, I want to talk to you a little bit more about kind of support from the government. So Ronald gave us information about, some background about how he started his journey and the support that he got on a personal level. But for you, I'd like to ask a little bit more about support for, patients, for the general population in terms of an affordability and care. How do you think the Hong Kong government and other regulators can help patients or the population at large be able to afford health in the future?
Sure. I think the key word is primary care. So the calculation is very simple. If you detect it early, you need less resources, whether it's human resources, whether it's actual resources to treat it. So it makes sense for us to expand that area, because we were talking about, hospital being overburdened all the time. You want more doctors, but, the entire world is in shortage of doctors. And one thing that we can sort of manage the resources a bit better is to reduce the times that we actually do need the resources. And that could be achieved by, earlier pre-hospital sort of care. And that's one main area that is challenging, but I think there are a lot of players that could help in that system as well. So I know a lot of partners that we're working with in the private sector would like to help the government on the primary care side. There are a lot of solutions that would make sense for the government to trial and start adopting, so that we can provide better primary care as well. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be always there for healthcare problems. And the way to do this is really to decentralize and making sure we can pick up early with the right technologies.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Justin. So the MC just reminded me that there is only 5 minutes left, and I did promise the last few minutes to be put aside for any questions from our audience or our online audience. So please feel free to message or let me know if you guys have questions, and I'd be happy to share them with our speakers. Okay.
So if you have any question, please scan the QR codes to ask any questions. So we're only taking questions online, all right?
So please scan the QR code with any questions that you might have. And I have this nifty iPad with any questions that show up.
So for our online audience, if you have any question, please scan the QR code as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. So William, you have experience with founding an internet insurance company, and you also talked about blockchain earlier. So can you tell us a little bit more about the fundamental principles for bringing healthcare and blockchain together, and how does that help avoid fraud, etc.?
I think the internet economy is about connectivity. Actually, connectivity, it sounds very, very simple, but it can do a lot of things. Because actually nowadays we have all the rule, all the AI that can actually automate a lot of processes and also generate a lot of insight. But often you don't have the data, so you cannot generate these kind of insight. You cannot automate these processes. But once we have that connectivity, it can create a lot of things. For example, before internet exists, actually you cannot create an e-commerce shop that easily. You have to hire people. But now you don't need a place. You can do business. It's only because of connectivity the internet is changing the world. So I think the Web3 is another innovation that is coming. I'm very optimistic about it.
Great. Thank you, William. I see that there is a question for Ronald. Ronald, you have a decade of experience in research and development. Could you tell us some other innovations in the field that you expect in these coming years?
I think there are two very important technology changes. One is the automation of the surgical robotics in the surgeon field, because now doctors getting more and more easy with the robots, and they expect it to be more automatic. Whereas currently mostly is assisting the surgeon, but they want it to be more automated. So I think that is a very challenging field, because it's not only the robotics or the surgical planning, but also the AI part and also the regulatory part. So how the regulatory can approve a machine with a certain autonomous, it's like autonomous driving. So I think this will be a very key point within this 5 or 7 years, in particular in the mainland China, and also a handful, a few Hong Kong companies actually working on this. So I think this is something we is catching our eyeballs on this.
Great, thank you, Ronald. Justin, it looks like there's a question for you. The question is, when it comes to affordability, where do you think, in which geographic areas do you think it's going to be important in the world? I'm guessing this is outside of Hong Kong.
Yeah, no. So I think anywhere other than the US. It's a very, very interesting conversation when we always have with US. It's always the more expensive, the better. That's a big part of it as well. You have to align all the local stakeholders in healthcare. And I think anywhere with a bigger public presence in terms of healthcare, you would want more affordability, and that's the general trend of it. But I think in most of the world are trying to make it a lot more easier for the healthcare system to cope. And affordability is one big part to play in this.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for our audience for all of your questions as well. I know we're running out of time. The MC is already standing up to rush me. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and a round of applause for our wonderful speakers today.
Thank